Hi, everyone. Welcome to everybody from the Provo region. Thank you so much for joining us on the Autism After 21 Utah Initiative Zoom call. Yesterday, we had great calls with Logan and Ogden areas and Salt Lake. And so now today we get to launch off with Provo and then later today with Southern Utah. So thank you very much for everybody being on. I know we have a few more hopping on. So why don't, before I dive in, how about, I think let's start off with a really wonderful message from Governor Cox that he had provided for us for this statewide launch that we had on April 7th. And he just nails the message on exactly what we're trying to do. So why don't we start off with Governor Cox?
Utah has the proud distinction of leading the way for our nation in so many ways. With our healthcare systems, our commitment to families, our work to end homelessness, our universities and their research, our tech transfer and entrepreneurial spirit, and so much more. But there is a growing group of individuals and families in all of our communities who face extraordinary challenges, often unnoticed and too often alone. Autism is a diagnosis that affects not only the individual, but multiple generations of families. Parents, siblings, grandparents, all of you face the challenges of accessing early support that will give your child the best chance to realize his or her unique and exceptional potential. But when that son or daughter turns 22, we know that most support ends. We know that one or both parents often must leave their career because there are not enough supportive housing opportunities, supportive employment situations, or social or recreational programs. We also know that 85% will live at home their entire lives, and then when their parent or caregiver dies, some may become homeless. Others will be assigned to the next available bed, removed from the only community and contacts they've ever known in their lives. As such, we face both a humanitarian and an economic crisis. When any individual does not reach his or her potential, we are all impacted. Healthcare costs rise, support needs to rise. Talents are missing from the workplace, homelessness increases. But worst of all, families face the lifelong nightmare of wondering who will care for their adult child when they no longer can. But it doesn't have to be this way, and Utah knows what to do. As governor, I lend my full support to a new collective action effort to change the future for all adults with autism and their families here in Utah. We especially welcome the involvement of Madison House Autism Foundation, one of the first national organizations to dedicate its work to adults on the spectrum and their families. Our goals for this Autism After 21 initiative are to replicate the exemplary projects that already exist in our state, learn from national research, best practices and emerging concepts, work together to envision and build inclusive communities across our state, and develop a statewide blueprint that can lead the way for other states, other families, and other communities. Now, a young woman here in Utah who is on the spectrum spoke about the isolation that she and her autistic brother feel, their desire to connect and contribute, and their capacity to do so if the rest of us find the way to inclusion. She said, "We have the capacity to know where we are wanted." And then she went on to say, "Just because we don't show it doesn't mean we don't love you back." That is our goal with this initiative. With this work, we take another important step to achieving greater equity and inclusion for all Utahns. Thank you to all of you taking part in this statewide virtual call to ensure that all our communities are represented, involved, engaged, and moving toward interconnectedness. I have every confidence that with all of you collaborating with Madison House Autism Foundation, the state of Utah will produce the blueprint for all other states to follow.
Governor Cox got it right. Utah really is the best place for this statewide blueprint, a first in the nation. And this is going to be a 3-year pilot program, as many of you already know. And this is really a first to work comprehensively across all sectors in a real unified, statewide, yet localized plan in order to address the needs of Utah's adult autistic population and their families. I want to thank those who are on the call already, our collaborators, UVU, Center for Autism, and of course, Marty Matheson with Scenic View Academy. Great to have you guys on. And we have a lot of great collaborators across the state because, of course, this is definitely a project that has to happen with collaboration. So just to back up a little bit, I'm Charlene Wells, and I'm on the advisory board for the Madison House Autism Foundation, and it's based near the nation's capital in Maryland, but was founded by Utahns Greg and Jalen Prince 13 years ago. Madison House is on the national and the international stage, leading the way very specifically in something that has fallen through the cracks. What happens to our autistic citizens after the age of 21 when educational services end, families are left to fend for themselves? And nationally, there's about 30 million people who are impacted by autism spectrum disorder. Just like in every other state, autistic adults are on the rise in Utah. In fact, we've got one of the highest rates, and this lack of opportunities for when adults age out of school is really just too large for families to address on their own. And that's why you're all invited to be on this call. We need your leadership and the hospitable communities that Utah is so famous for. And we're so interconnected and supportive. And so this is really going to make for a successful blueprint. There are already many great things happening, as I mentioned before, UVU and Scenic View Academy, and the great things that Marty has been doing there and team at Scenic View Academy and so many others. But every community is very different. And so that's why it really matters for us to be able to connect those dots and find out what's happening in each of those communities and how they're doing the fantastic things that they're doing, and make sure that everybody else is aware. And then once we have that blueprint on all these great things that are working and how they're working and why they're working well, then that's what we can share with the rest of the country. I'm going to introduce to you a couple of experts, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. In fact, I really want to open up discussion. We want to hear from you. So please be writing down your questions. In fact, you're welcome to use the chat function if you want, and I can take a look there when we're into that portion of the call. So I would like to actually start next. I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I'd like to set the stage for this Utah initiative, the Autism After 21 Utah specifically initiative. And I'm going to introduce the co-founder of Madison House Autism Foundation, Jalen Prince. And as I mentioned, Jalen and Greg, they live in Maryland, but also in Utah, and they both have Utah roots and are parents of 3 children, including 31-year-old Madison, who is on the spectrum. The Princes were featured, as you may have seen, in Deseret News a couple of years ago for their groundbreaking work to spotlight and address the major crisis that faces all families who have a loved one with autism after the age of 21. Jalen has been a national voice for adults with autism and their families for decades. When they founded the foundation in 2008, it was the first national organization to focus solely on the issues, challenges, and opportunities for adults on the spectrum. That vision has led to policy changes at the national level, research shared freely with stakeholders, guidance to hundreds of groups and families wanting to start their own inclusive housing project, and led to a national awareness campaign for National Autism After 21 Day on April 21st. Jalen was selected to be part of the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee of the National Institutes of Health. She has served on the advisory board for Johns Hopkins School of Education and sits on several boards for universities here in Utah. She has spoken at the United Nations, Voice of America, consulted on an NBC documentary on adult autism, participated in the White House Summit on Autism, presented at TED Global in Oxford, and was recognized as National Mother of the Year. And in her spare time, by the way, she is a world-class photojournalist documenting humanitarian efforts globally. She's traveled to more than 72 countries, documenting the work of numerous NGOs. So it's a huge honor to turn the time now over to Jalen.
I'm so delighted to be here and be with all of you. I grew up on the other side of a mountain that we both share. I boast that we had the face of the sleeping princess of Timpanogos, and you get the other side. But nonetheless, I came over into Utah County when I went to school. And I have very fond thoughts and feelings about the area that you're in and the people that you represent. I'd like to tell you a little bit. Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge my husband. He's on this call too, and he happens to be down in St. George. And currently, we have a situation where he's 2 weeks here and 2 weeks in St. George. So we really do have a lot of connections to Utah in many, many, many different ways. I'd like to tell you what we are trying to do. We are working throughout the state. We started with some of the thought leaders that are statewide thought leaders at the beginning of the month. And now we're working through various regions. And you are in the Provo region, and it extends from one side of the state to the other. So there are rural areas as well included in what you are doing. The thing we're trying to do first is to engage thought leaders around the communities throughout the state, and then mayors, city councils, county commissioners, the commissions, people that are in a position to build, make mortgages, to do planning for parks, recreation, all sorts of aspects. And you are making up a large portion of that because you are people that bring various skills and your influence into play. But the thing that I have found so often throughout the community is that people are unaware that those beautiful children that you see in various things in the beginning of Autism Month do grow up to become adults. And what happens after they leave high school? There are very few supports. There are more and more developing, and I sing out the praises of the things that are happening at Utah Valley University, especially because they are making a pathway for both individuals that are on the spectrum to have successful college experiences, but to also train people in the field of autism. And we feel it's so important to have that example of those things going hand in hand. But as thought leaders, we want to engage you and to ask you to help us reach out to other thought leaders and people that you know in the community. Because if people are unaware that this population exists, how in the world can you step forward to help? And there are so many people in the state of Utah. If we go with the statistics of 2%, and that's where the indicators are right now, that in Utah, you would have 63,000 people that are on the spectrum. And put that into a neighborhood or a congregation of 300, you'd have 6 people. Add 2 parents and 2 siblings at least. And I keep smiling that Utah has probably more than 2 siblings. You may have 4, 5, 6, 7, and I won't even keep on counting. But everybody's impacted in a family when somebody is on the spectrum. But if the individual, their parents and 2 siblings are holding hands, that chain could lead from Salt Lake to St. George. That's a lot of people. And we can make spaces in our communities to be inclusive and understanding of what these individuals are coping with and also what their families are dealing with. Because there's an economic component, but above all, there's a humanitarian component. And we can make a difference in lives, and we can also make a difference in the economy of our communities by directing resources wisely into making certain that there are spaces and places for people to be. We will be asking you to help us with surveys, and we will do approximately 1 a year over the next 3 years. This is an initial phase, so we can get an understanding of where we're starting, how we're progressing, and hoping some good results. And if we can collect that information, it'll be vital. We will do that with you, and then we want to have you help us to reach out and identify people in your community. There is no central registry of which families are living with autism. And we need your help to identify people that you know so we can also step forward and find out what they want. Now, I know there have been some surveys and things throughout the state. We don't want to duplicate those things, but we do want people who are living with autism to have a voice to tell us what they need, what their wants are, what they hope for their future, and how we can put that into the fabric of our communities and make our communities even stronger. So we will have surveys for these individuals and their families. We'll have surveys for the thought leaders, and then we will also come in, and we have Desiree Kamika, you will be hearing from in a few moments. We will survey things about housing needs, because we are one, if not the leader, actually the leader. I won't be humble on that. I will say we are the leader in disability housing for adults with autism and IDD. And Desiree has consulted all over the country, and we've been asked to consult in countries elsewhere. And we want to bring information that we have so people can make their own decisions and do what it is that you want to have happen in your communities. We're not going to tell you what you want, but we will let you know about options and things that people don't know about. The other thing that we want to do is, as we go down this path, identify the wonderful things that are happening in the state of Utah. And I know Scenic View is doing wonderful things. The university is doing great things. The Housing Authority is doing important things. We want to shine a light on the good things that are happening and encourage people in other communities to look to the communities to the north and south of themselves to see if some of your own answers reside within your state boundaries. And if not, maybe with our experience nationally, we can help bring in some other things. But I think you've got so many things that are best practices, but it's hard for one organization to know what another organization is doing when they're so busy serving the people that they represent. I welcome you here. I look forward to working with you. And I do want to announce something. Sumiku Martinez, you'll see her on the screen, has just come on board to be our state coordinator. And you will enjoy so much working with her, and you'll get to know her very well. And she understands the state. She lives here, and she has worked here, and she knows the state and has a deep passion for it. I want to mention something. We have two friends, John Donovan and Karen Zucker, who wrote a book called In a Different Key. And it is a very interesting book about autism, but they were motivated because they wondered if the first person to be diagnosed with autism was still around. And indeed, this person is still alive and is in Mississippi. And his community had embraced him after his diagnosis, and with him living there. They have written a book about him, and it has been made into a movie, and it's been in film festivals and has run several. You'll see 4 of them listed in just a moment, but they've won numerous others since then, that talks about how a community got it right. And we're hoping that communities throughout the state can get it right, because it can make a difference in people's lives. Can we please roll that? And I will let us move on. Thank you.
I've always known Don. I don't remember not knowing Don.
We knew that Don was a little different,
but what it was, we didn't know.
He is the first person to be ever diagnosed with autism.
At the time, autism wasn't even a word.
I had heard that the first person diagnosed with autism might still be alive and living in this small town in Mississippi.
Good to see you.
Hey, Shelby Welby.
Hey, Don.
Hey, Nat the cat.
Well, hi, Don, darling.
Hey, Chandler the plant.
Stop resisting! Get the cups.
Hey, can I go, please?
I only knew that I was different, and that different was bad. You're weird, you're a freak, you're a retard, you're a loser, you're ugly. These were the things that I heard on a daily basis.
Go, go, go!
In my research study, every Black family that I've met with has asked a similar question. How do we keep our children safe? How do we fix this situation so that our children won't die?
like that.
Autism is a little different. Your brain works a lot differently than most people. Hello. Hi, Karen. Hello.
Do you get any kind of support from anybody?
Not really. It's just me. Nobody's going to do what I do.
So you just can't die?
Right. It's got to be immortal.
Don's got some odd behaviors and some eccentricities, but he's our guy.
I was just so drawn to him and this community. I wanted to figure out, how did they get it right? Because they really did get it right.
And you know what? That's what we're doing here, is finding out all the ways we're getting it right. And we're documenting it and formalizing it, and then being able to share it with the rest of the country. I'm just so excited we're doing that. I'm thrilled to introduce one of the foremost authorities on housing for adults with autism, and she's part of Madison House Autism Foundation, Desiree Kamika. She has made it her mission to understand, represent, and share the broad range of autism-friendly community development opportunities and inclusive housing needs. She is the director of our Autism Housing Network for over a decade. She's helped guide more than 250 inclusive housing projects across the country and works with community leaders daily to build more inclusive communities. She is a sought-after expert on neuro-inclusive housing models. She was asked to speak at the United Nations recently. She co-authored and co-edited the groundbreaking community development report entitled A Place in the World, which is being praised for changing the landscape and defining new markets for housing for neurodiverse adults. Desiree has a truly unique knowledge of the policies, the funding, planning, and collaboration that is needed to create inclusive communities. And best of all, she shares it freely. Desiree, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation with all the leaders in the Provo region.
Thank you, Charlene. And thank you, Provo, for coming and showing up. This is an exciting collaboration. You see, Don should have been institutionalized, but he wasn't, because his community was able to wrap their arms around him and support him through his life. And not just by placing him in a program so that the professionals could take care of him, but really creating that person-centered community where he is at the center and they can enable him to go to his faith community, be able to find a job, be able to connect with friends, be able to participate in civic life. That is kind of the solutions that we are striving for, is person-centered solutions. We've brought together an impressive roster of partners, and we're going to do great things. You see, this Utah blueprint for local communities has the potential and the capacity to solve a national crisis, a crisis of exclusion. And so how are we going to do it? Well, at Madison House Autism Foundation, we are committed to data-driven solutions. And so the first thing that we're going to do is provide local leaders a baseline survey. We want to know, in your local community, have you prioritized housing resources for individuals with autism or other neurodiversities? Do you have transportation ready and set up to be able to help those who can't drive? Do you have access to an immediate response if someone who is an adult on the spectrum is found wandering from their home? These are different aspects of the community that can be aligned to ensure that our communities are neuro-inclusive. And of course, housing is a big part of it. So we'll work with the local community leaders, trying to understand the gaps, grabbing those baselines. And then we're also going to be working with those inside the autism bubble. We're going to be asking some of the leaders on this call today to take a look at a draft survey so that we are collecting the information that is going to allow us to drive policy and incentives towards funding streams and removing any regulatory barriers that are currently standing in the way. And then finally, we're going to embark on an in-depth market analysis. And this market analysis has proven to change funding streams. We just completed a process outside of Denver. And with that report, which tells the local leaders what people want and what innovations are possible, we've been able to potentially secure innovative funding from the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. And so data has the ability to change the future. And that's why this initiative is so exciting, because we're going to be bringing together all of us. This is a collaboration to move Utah forward so that adults with autism can finally find their place in the world. So we're going to ask you over the course of the next 3 years to fill out some surveys, maybe be part of focus groups, share your resources so that we can then share them with other parts of Utah. We're going to act as a hub of information so we can connect the innovation that's already happening in your state and be able to replicate faster with less effort, using the lessons learned and the best practices that you have already found. I'm excited to work with you, and I can't wait for our future collaborative experiences. Right now, we're going to show a video that talks about jobs. Now, jobs are so important because it gives people meaning, but it also allows access to social capital, right? Those relationship buildings. It's proving that people on the autism spectrum can and want to be part of the local economy. So we're excited to show you this video of autistic adults talking about their dream job.
I could teach history in a way that changes the world.
Right now, I'm considering neurology or emergency medicine.
In special education with kids on the autism spectrum.
I would love to help people with communication. I love learning about people. People learn about themselves through history. I could teach history in a way that changes the world.
He said he wants a candy store where all with disabilities can work and gain more independence.
I want to be a doctor. Right now, I'm considering neurology or emergency medicine. And then eventually, I want to do overseas medical missions in developing countries to help bridge healthcare gaps there.
My dream job is to work in special education with kids on the autism spectrum, which will be the ideal job for me, and giving back because I was in that same situation myself. So that's my dream job.
My dream job would definitely to incorporate autism advocacy into my legal career at some point. So hopefully to eventually become some sort of lobbyist to create legislation focusing on autistic adults and their access to affordable housing and accessible housing, as well as employment. A lot of us struggle to get employment, and I think it's because of a lot of misconceptions people have about autism. So really just breaking that barrier and educating corporations and other places of what it is we can offer and how with the proper accommodations, we are really an asset to the workforce.
So I'm actually working and living my dream job. I started out as a dental assistant, worked as a clinical research scientist. I really was fired from a lot of jobs, or not just fired, but I quit. I couldn't hold a job. And then I found the mental health field. Fell in love, so I do therapies now and advocate work, and that's what I love, man. This is where I want to stay.
Acting. I'm a bit rusty at it. I guess acting or modeling or something like that would be a dream job.
Many years ago, I always said that I had a dream of maybe working in the computer industry, in the tech industry. I mean, there was a time when I was always a master at upgrading computers, building computers. And now today it's more about understanding software, not necessarily coding it, but understanding how it works and try to get other people to understand it.
I wish I could just retire and fish at this point, but I think I would enjoy being a linguist.
So enlightening, right? Oh my gosh, that was so great. Okay, now I'm going to move my screen over to gallery view. I want to see everybody. So please turn on your video if you haven't already. Would love to see you. I invite you to either raise your hand or something, catch my attention if you got a question, or put it in the chat box, and we'll start addressing. We really want to have a discussion. It's just great to have all of you on here. And if I don't see a question right off the bat, I've got one. Let's see anybody. Okay, so Jillian, if I could ask you this, so I've been telling everybody this is such a unique thing, right? You know, and from my perspective, not being intimately involved like you and Greg, I would think that a statewide plan would have been done, I don't know, years ago, and it's not. So describe how unique this is.
Well, I think there's a number of things that have played into this. There's kind of a recognized tsunami, and our son happens to be kind of on that crest over the last 30 years, although there'd been people prior to that were diagnosed. And a lot of learning has happened even during my son's lifetime. And people have been so very involved very often in doing the things that they need to regionally or in their location. It's kind of like politics. Many things with autism are local, you know, because you need to have that personal touch at various times. And so we have a lot of people and a lot of organizations who are doing wonderful things in their communities, but their mandate isn't necessarily, I'm going to do this, but I've got a huge budget to step forward and promote what I'm doing so a community 15 miles away can duplicate what I'm doing. They're usually too busy doing the good work that they're doing. We were formulated and we for a long time, basically, we're the only organization working with lifespan issues, and we're really the first dedicated to this. So we've been able to look around and to see the things that have been happening, and we see a lot of good things going on. It is not a coordinated effort. We don't have a governmental plan. We don't have a state plan. We don't even have organizations really coming together to say, let's do this slice, and this slice. Everything is kind of, well, we're doing a little bit of everything. There's duplication. And we are in a position to come forward to look at an area, and Utah, not only being my home state, but because of the nature of the state, seems ideal for this, to be a leader in coming together so we can show other states how they may be able to look at the resources that they've got. They may have many of their own answers in their own states. Mm-hmm. And if we can help people see those things, and we can start a national conversation where we can get additional funding. Only 4% of the autism budget out of NIH goes to research for those that are adults on the autism spectrum. And that's a small budget. So very little of very little isn't much.
Right.
And we need to get more funding. And if we work together and collectively, we can be heard.
Okay. Matt Evans has a great question, and thank you to Center for Autism at Utah Valley for also weighing in. But he says, what is the demand for 21 plus housing in Utah County? And if we don't know, what are the best resources to find out? And then Center for Autism responded, no comprehensive needs assessment has been done for the county, as far as I know. And Marty, I wonder if I can just pull you in, you know, you down there in Utah County, is there anything specifically that you might know about that question?
Yeah, I agree with what the Center for Autism, with what they said. We're not aware of any comprehensive needs assessment, so that could be a good thing, a good project for this group that we address, just so we can know that specifically. From our perspective at Scenic View, since we serve the adults who are in need of the housing, we don't have any data to share, but what we know is there are lives and individuals, of course. And so we're working with those individuals, and we know that the need is greater than the housing availability is. And so there needs to be more resources out there. So we're striving to serve those who we can, but the need is much, much greater. And so there's more people, as we know. The growth in Utah County is tremendous. Even in the news here, in terms of Provo and Utah County being ranked very high nationally in terms of growth. So that also increases the need for autism. So we're excited to be part of this and want to help be part of the solution as well.
And you
And I
just
just saw Rose had commented as well. And I wanted to give a follow-up with that because I think that I can address a few things. One of the reasons why we need to do a comprehensive plan that looks at the community first and outside of the autism bubble is because there are things that influence funding streams. For example, funding for individuals who are experiencing homelessness. Now, I know Utah has taken care of the homeless problem, but the problem is the data. Individuals who are living with senior caregivers are not being counted as at risk of homelessness, nor at risk of displacement from their community due to lack of affordable, accessible housing. So that's one of the ways in which we need to take autism data and infuse it into what is happening already in the community so that individuals on the spectrum are not falling through the cracks. And the second thing I wanted to say, and it really does come out of our experience doing this in other places, is we do have a process for very specific data collection to understand the needs and preferences of the neurodiverse population. We call it our Empowering Communities Initiative, and it is certainly part of the Blueprint State Plan. And what we do is we educate, first of all, the local community so that individuals on the spectrum and their families understand the broad range of options for residential, because there's not just one size fits all, right? Autism is diverse and their solutions should be diverse as well. And then once we collect that data using our already developed needs and preferences survey, both in plain language and in an extended version, then we take that data to local leaders and we say, this is the demand. This is what people want. Where are your strength barriers and opportunities? And that's how we start to develop these localized, kind of like a path forward that will inform the state blueprint. So yes, there needs to be a comprehensive analysis of what people want, but only after they are educated. Otherwise, you could potentially get skewed data because people don't necessarily know what their options are.
Excellent point.
And then Rose had talked about specific outputs. What are the specific outputs and outcomes? That's part of this baseline survey because we only have limited time, energy, and resources, right? So we have to figure out where do the synergies of the local leaders, the local level, the non-autism community connect with the interests and the needs of the population of individuals on the spectrum and their families. And then once we can start to identify where are the gaps that are aligning and the tools that the local leaders will actually use, because we can develop the most comprehensive tools that we think are wonderful, but if the local leaders aren't going to use them, then we've just wasted our time and energy. And so this first set of baseline data survey is going to help inform what are going to be our measured outcomes for the future.
Excellent. Marty, if I could come back to you, what was your experience working with the Provo Housing Authority?
Yeah, happy to share that. So for the last probably 4 or 5 years, we've been working closely with the Provo Housing Authority. It started off very small, and that was where they provided housing vouchers for some of our students in some of their projects in Provo City. And that has grown over the past few years to the point where Provo City recently had a groundbreaking about a month and a half ago now for a new building that they are constructing in downtown Provo, just off of University Avenue in back of the Wells Fargo building. And so a 70-unit building, and we're so excited because 30 of those units are designated for adults with autism. So we're so thrilled and so excited for this. And we hope that this will be a model that can continue, not just within Provo and Utah County, but throughout the state.
Oh, it's stuff like that we want to document and we want to really get down. Jolynn, did you want to say something?
Yes, we have somebody on this call who is actually kind of new to Utah in a way, but he's had a national impact, and that's Larry Gluth. And he's been working in Atlanta, and he's had a broad background in housing. But Larry, what has been your experience in seeing things nationally? Have you seen anything like this, like what we're trying to approach in the years that you've been involved with this?
Really nothing. So first of all, thanks, Jolynn. I do have roots in Utah. I'm a graduate of the University of Utah. And my wife and I built our retirement home in Midway, and I've just been really bad at retiring. So I continue to lead an organization by the name of the Bobby Dodd Institute in Atlanta, Georgia. And we have a kind of a broader focus around all disabilities, although as parents, our son has ASD. And is a junior at the University of Utah. So we've seen firsthand what the appropriate supports can do. And on the housing side, so first of all, to answer Jalen's question, no, I'm not familiar with anything that's being done, nationally or broadly. I mean, there are a lot of local and regional efforts that we've observed. And we've tried to really align ourselves and collaborate with other organizations around the country, specifically some in the Phoenix area, certainly the work that you're doing here. And I am just delighted to be a little bit of an interloper here with this group because I'd love to learn lessons that I can take back to Georgia. Our organization right now is doing due diligence on the feasibility of developing a 4-acre site that we own in really a rapidly redeveloping area on the west side of Atlanta. And so I've had the opportunity to spend a little time with Christy and the folks at Columbus and tour their facility in Salt Lake City, and came away really excited about the possibilities. And so we're going to try to tie that into a capital campaign and then some other affordable housing efforts that are happening in the Atlanta area. But yeah, there's so much work to do in this area. And again, Jalen and I have had this conversation about, it feels like all the pieces of the puzzle are on the table, but it's this huge jigsaw puzzle that we are trying to put all the pieces together. And so I hope to reach out to several of you. Marty, I'd love to talk with you and learn more about your project. Desiree, we need to connect and talk about things that you might be able to do. But anything that I can do to support this work, and I feel like I kind of go between Utah County and Salt Lake County, and so you may see me at a little bit of both. But thanks for the opportunity to be a part of this.
Thank you, Larry. And I think you illustrate something. Utah's already having an impact, right? Yeah. Because somebody else is looking at us, but also looking at the things that we are doing. And you all are starting to connect. That's the whole important thing, is people connecting to solve a problem together. Charlene, I'll turn it back to you.
Oh my gosh, no, so well said. And Larry, thank you very much. And thanks for staying connected and staying in Utah, at least some of the time. We like having you here. And really great comments coming in from everybody. Rose and Matt, thank you so much. And Rose had a great question. Oh, and Jared, thank you. Yes, absolutely. We need that shared with us. But Rose's question, maybe for Desiree, what have you learned from the California regional centers?
Yes. So first of all, yes, Jared, let's connect and create a needs assessment that we could utilize to be able to identify adults who are at risk of homelessness. That it would be huge. And Rose, great question. So in California, their Medicaid is what pays for long-term support services. So Medicaid is kind of the thing that pays for the person that comes in and makes sure someone's got their schedule together, maybe helps them cook, make sure they've taken medication, maybe helps them get ready, depending on the individual's level of support. Medicaid has evolved to allow people to live in their own home and access services from their preferred service provider in different service delivery methods. If all of this kind of sounds like gibberish, this is a great resource, the Place in the World Report. It lists and defines the different service delivery models. So maybe things can sound a little bit more familiar for those who aren't familiar with the adult system. So the way that California works is, one, they work on an entitlement system, which means anybody who has autism or an intellectual and developmental disability who is eligible for waiver services is able to access services. So that's one thing that Utah could do. And there's actually a national push called the National HCBS Access Act of 2021 that was just drafted and released as a draft. So maybe we might have this on the national scale in the next few years. But One, our system could become an entitlement system in Utah. The second thing is because California is such a large state, they have these different regional centers. And so the management, and this happens in different states, there's other states who have a regional system too. It's actually a very local representation of how people are accessing services. So my interaction with the regional centers is that the leadership of the regional centers has a lot of influence on what is innovated on the ground. So there are regional systems in California that have been very much in support of innovation and helping local communities think about how we can use housing as that social determinant of health and connecting people and helping people access services in the way that best works for them. And there's been other regional centers that have been kind of risk averse and has actually created barriers in being able to innovate. So I would say that that's one of the things that we have learned from the regional system in Utah is it really does matter what region you live in. And so we see people moving to different regions in order to access the services from people that they want to access services from in the way in which they want them served. So, and when you say California's regional system is the payer of last resort, I mean, Medicaid is the bottom line, really. When we're talking about long-term support services for people with autism, Medicaid is the bottom line. And that is what funds, and all across our country, the services for people with disabilities, who are seniors, and that's different than healthcare. I know that that's kind of confusing. Medicaid has the healthcare component for individuals who are extremely low income, but they also take care of the long-term support services in our country as well.
Thank you, Desiree. We are so lucky to have the subject matter expert on the topic, so to be part of this team. And one of the things I want to mention to Matt, in addition to working with Larry, also get with Marty on what they had been doing. So really excellent stuff. We're just getting started on this, but for this particular call, we're mindful of your time. So we will close out. And we're going to end with a short video vignette. If you can stay on and watch, that would be great. This is another wonderful Utahn with a Utah adult with autism. So thank you for joining us. Yes, Tamara.
Ask just a quick question. I'm just a local community coordinator. And what do we do to stay? I mean, do we just give you our email? Do we here's my phone number? I just don't want to lose this connection and working with people in Orem, and I'm in Pleasant Grove, and we're kind of a small community, but.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tamara. There will be more information coming to an inbox near you. Please follow up with the survey. We're going to send you a survey, not immediately, but you will be, we do have your email address, I believe, because you registered. So we will be in touch with you. We appreciate you reading everything, that we send to you. It should only take 5 minutes a month.
Yep, that's it. 5 minutes a month. We ask you to commit for that because we'll tell you about some of the things happening in Utah, give you a little more information about autism in general, and then help you understand how you can bring the conversation into your community. If it's in boardrooms, planning, parks, any of these things, we'll give you those recommendations, but 5 minutes a month. So don't.
I'll give you more than 5 minutes a month, and I'll give you people in my community too. You just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
You are on board. Love that. Love that. Absolutely, Tamara.
You've got her number.
I know, right? And the other question on, is there a way for us to get acquainted with all those on this call since we're connected geographically? You know what? Let's figure that out. Maybe we'll talk about that and then discuss, because, I know some of you may not want to share email contact information. So let's figure that out. Maybe we can create a Facebook page or something that we can connect everybody on, because I think that's very valuable. So we'll figure that out and get back with you on that. Okay. All right. Thank you. And we appreciate you. There will be more in the future. And I like Sumiko's comment that she's going to be helping to coordinate all this. Yay, Sumiko. So we're excited moving forward. This is going to be an exciting team, and we need every single one of you. So thank you very, very, very much. And hopefully you can stay on and watch the video. If not, that's okay. We got it on our website too. So thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Connor is a beautiful, beautiful person. He does not judge anybody. He's funny.
He's charismatic. He loves to meet new people.
Connor is social.
People want to be around him. People want to hear him laugh and joke. He's a people person.
Connor, are you ready for breakfast?
Can you get some cereal?
Connor hasn't had a lot of peace growing up.
Good job.
He has had a lot of ups and downs over the years, a lot of frustration because he can't tell us what he wants or he needs. And we're so grateful the last year and a half or so, we've been able to really see his personality come out.
Put it all the way down. We got your cool blue sweatshirt.
I think it takes Connor a lot of time to really trust people. And when he can be in a system where he's like right now, where he's had the same teachers for 3 or 4 years, he has a strong foundation to base his learning and his development off of. But the current system continues for a couple more months and then it's over.
2 socks. Then you can get your toy, okay?
It took us probably 10 different tries to find that setting where Connor could progress and be happy. There were some where he would get so stressed he would hurt himself. He would bite chunks out of his hand. He would hit his head through the wall. As Connor ages out of the school and we're looking at other options, I'm worried that we won't be able to replace that.
Have a kiss. Love you. Be good. Good morning, buddy. Morning, Connor.
All right, guys, let's get started. Let's see how you're feeling today. Jordan, Bush, how are you feeling?
Almost been anticipating this moment since I came. Like, oh my gosh, you graduate in 5 years, and then what? The support's not the same, and you know that in the back of your head. You just think, what are you going to do for these 5 hours a day?
Connor, how are you feeling?
How are you feeling? Happy.
I'm so glad. All right, we got 8 happy people here this morning.
I've kind of thought about the metaphor of the cliff a lot. I feel like we've taken several tandem jumps off the cliff, right? Me and Connor and his parents and all these people that understand him. And we're taking chances and doing things that aren't easy for Connor all the time because he's comfortable and safe here. And then once he turns 22, I kind of feel like then you send him out on his own, whether he has his own parachute or not. He's not going to be successful in the community or in a workplace if he doesn't feel safe.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Some Coke?
When we're not providing that same support, I feel like as a society, we're inadvertently communicating that their goals and dreams aren't as important as other people's.
What did you eat, Connor? Good job, Connor.
I wish more people would come into our school and watch our kids and see how capable they are. There's still a huge stigma that our students are a throwaway society. Connor belongs here. He has every right to be here. He contributes. Connor's going to be with us for a really long time. It's our responsibility to rally around and support Connor's family in raising him up to be the best that he can be. What's going to happen next? We have to learn to be able to incorporate adults with autism into our community. We have to provide jobs for them. We have to pay the people better that are going to support them and live with them and care for them.
What would you like, Connor? Pardon? Coke, please.
My fear is that he will go through a ton of support workers from program to program, and nobody will get to know him like I do.
Hi, Connor. See you tomorrow. Okay, bye, bud.
Right now, Connor has 45, 50 plus hours a week of support.
They have speech therapists and behavior supports and teachers, and then when they turn 22, all that structure just goes away. Even if he's in a day program offering full hours of support, instantly the hours he has support will be cut in half. The other thing that's so hard about the supports that Medicaid waivers offer are they're unpredictable. What's offered today may not be offered tomorrow.
Hey Connor, where are we going?
Boardwalk,
that's right.
Adults like Connor make our lives better, and they have so much to offer. He is truly a gift to my family. Every week, Connor shows us something new that he could do that we didn't know before. Nobody knows what his potential is. Nobody knows how far he could go and how much he could still learn.
Connor's just as valuable as he's ever been. He really wants to remain an active member of society. Just because these people are getting older, there's no reason that they don't deserve that same kind of support.
We know that at some point he's going to be living on his own. We don't know what that means yet. I worry that he's going to be thrown into a situation where people will see Connor as a job. I want him to be someplace where he can express himself and is always treated like a person.